talk to you guys about the books that I read in September, kind of. I'm pulling up my list of books right now in Goodreads because I don't always remember. I do not always remember. Okay. So, for books I read in this month, or I'm going to really say like the last 5 weeks, because honestly, the first 3.5 weeks of the month were kind of a bit of a wash. I was just like, when you're not like in the headspace to read, and I think that's what happened. There was a lot going on. There's always a lot going on, but there was a lot going on. And so I didn't do quite as much reading earlier in the month as I would have wanted to. But towards the end of the month / the beginning of October, things picked up. And so this video is going to be a wrap up of the last 5 weeks. And my next wrap up will be a little bit more condensed. I'm either going to condense it, or I am going to do a wrap up at the end of, I might do a wrap up at the end of November. So we'll see what happens. If I do end up doing, waiting a longer time to do a wrap up, then I'll film a more substantial TBR video. But like at this point, I don't know if it's a good idea to film a TBR video or a TBR section of the video, because I do have quite a lot of things in progress, and so I don't know how much sense it makes to do an additional thing. But I do change my mind at the drop of a hat, so this video could turn into something completely different. Who knows? But anyways, so the first book that I finished, I actually finished on September 1st, and that was this guy. That was Say You'll Remember Me, and it was a good time. I think I gave it 3 stars, and it's not because I didn't like it. Well, I didn't really like a lot of the plot, but I really enjoyed the characters as I got to know them, and so I feel like they deserved my love, and because they deserved my love, I gave it 3 stars instead of like 2 stars. But all in all, like, it was a good book, and I like a pretty like a medium, a nice medium book. So it was a good time. I enjoyed the premise. I enjoyed where they ended up. And so, yeah, I would say I liked it. The second book that I finished in September, yeah, so basically that was all I read until September 29th. I finished this, and then I picked nothing up again for 28 days. I think, yeah, so that's just to give you some context. But it was a good time. Goodish time. Maybe it like threw me into a reading club also, though, so maybe it wasn't like the best time in the world, but I feel like I mostly enjoyed myself, and so I'm just going to, I don't know, we're just gonna leave that alone. I feel like, hold on, let me just fix this a little bit, give ourselves a little dimension. Is that better from up here? I think it's better from higher. We're professionals here, guys. Super profesh. I think that's fine. Okay, so that was that. September 29th, I picked up All About Love. It was really good. I did consume a lot of audiobooks this month. I read All About Love via audiobook, and I really need to pick up a copy so that I can scroll some notes in there. But I feel like a lot of what it talks about, especially concerning, your close relationships and concerning parenthood and, like what it means to give love in those different contexts, like that book threw me, and I don't know, it was a really good read though. Like, it was a really timely read. I did most of my listening to it while I was like at the gym, because when I'm at the gym, I'm like listening to a podcast or listening to an audiobook often, or like sometimes if I like really need motivation, I'm like watching YouTube videos of like Talia. But yeah, it was a really timely read for me. I feel like I needed some, I don't know, I was gonna say like some gentleness, but I don't feel like it was gentle. I just feel like the person who read the book on the audio just had a gentle disposition, but the book was not gentle. But it was good. You should read it. I gave that book 5 stars. I don't know how you could give it anything else. I feel like there are certain books you have to rate 5 stars because, like, you have to. And I feel like if you don't rate it 5 stars, and then maybe it hit a little close to home, and, you know, anyways, like, I've done that, so. The next book, I read like a chapter of it on audio, and then I finished it via the physical copy. And this is the book that my best friend gave to me before I let go. And I had been wanting to read this book for a while. Like, I'd had it just kind of sitting there waiting for me. I thought about reading it in, like, I think it was like May or June when she gave it to me. I thought about reading it then, didn't do it. And I wish I would have picked this up sooner, because now that I've read it, I just feel so like, okay, I'm in the lore. I understand what's going on. I now have to pick up the second one. I know that the third ones can't get enough, but I can't remember the second one, what it's called. So I'm going to be picking up the second one likely this month. But I'm not going to, like, make it a proper part of my TBR, just because I know what I like. And so I think I'll naturally gravitate towards it during my mood reading. But it was a good time. Excuse me, it was a good time. It was an easy 5 stars. This is everything that I want, like, a second chance romance to be, or like any romances that have like second chance tropes in like the third act. And like, I want all of it to look like this. It was a really good time. I'm so glad I read it. I can't wait to finish the other 2 books in this universe. And then I read Disobedient Women by Sarah Stancourt. And this book is all about how it's basically about like things that are going on or that have happened, I guess, in like charismatic church systems, and just like stories. Like, it's a trigger warning, all of the trigger warnings, but it's like stories of abuse of power, plain old abuse, and just what happens in a high control group, which we all know I'm very interested in. I spend a lot of time reading about high control groups, and so this is all about what goes on in those high control groups and how sometimes it can become really sinister, like not just like, oh, you're not being honest or whatever, but like sinister and evil. And it was I don't know how to properly talk about the book, so let me just give you a little summary. So journalist Sarah Stancourt outlines how access to the internet, its networks, freedoms of expression, and resources for deeply researching and reporting on the powerful church figures allowed women to begin dismantling the false authority of evangelical communities that had long demanded their submission. A generation of American Christian girls was taught submitting to men was God's will. They were taught not to question the men in their families or their pastors. They were told to remain sexually pure and trained to feel shame if a man was tempted. Some of these girls were abused and assaulted, some made to shrink down so small they became a shadow of themselves. To question their leaders was to question God. All the while, their male leaders built fiefdoms from megachurches and sprawling ministries. They influenced politics and policy. To protect the church's influence, these men covered up and hid abuse. And basically the gist of it is that a lot of times when abuse was taking place, abuse can take place anywhere. And so I don't want to say that it only happens in evangelical churches or like in only very like specific systems. It can happen anywhere. I think where like I call things into question is when everything has to be handled in-house and you can't involve the people who can actually help and give victims, especially, the resources that they need to heal and move on and grow from, this experience. And so there, you know, there's like a, I don't know, there's just this weird cyclical thing because it's like unchecked authority, and obviously unchecked authority is not good anywhere. And so reading about it in this context was really interesting and like devastating, obviously. But I feel like I'm sort of primed for this sort of narrative at this point because I've been reading about this kind of stuff specifically for months now. It doesn't make it lighter or anything like that, but it definitely makes it so that I can see, because I'm reading, I guess, broadly enough, I can see how this is possible in so many different structures, and I can see how kind of the central theme about it, or around any kind of abuse, whether it's like physical or like mental, emotional, like you see in some of these like power structures, and like what do you see in cults and things like that, what it always comes down to is like unchecked power, and then for like the victims or like the subordinates, no access to any sort of aid. And yeah, and like the quieting down of things, and like keeping things very hush hush and hidden, and handling things in house, like that whole thing. And so I don't know, it's just a really interesting book. I am having a really good time like with this specific space, and because I don't know, it's real life, and there is something to kind of just looking at that, you know, looking at that and witnessing that. And I have had an interesting time doing that. And I think that witnessing any sort of abuse of power, or witnessing anything that's kind of going wrong, is some of the best work that artists do as well. And so I can definitely see why this all intersects for me, because a lot of the like classic or postmodern, a lot of the classic and postmodern literature that I read kind of sits in that space as well, like sits in the position of the witness. So anyway, if you hear my dogs barking, one starts barking and the other is like, oh, me too. I also hear it. I also see it. And I'm like, what are you looking at? Because there's nothing here. We're in the same room. But anyways, what else did I want to talk about? I wanted to talk about everything that I am hoping to read in October, or just maybe things that I'm interested in reading and things that I've like picked up, started, etc. At this time, while I'm recording this video, I'm also recording a 24-hour reading challenge, and that'll go up next week likely, unless I decide randomly to record some sort of like actual formal TBR. But Boomer, go lay down. Go lay down. Thank you. So let me see what I can show you. I'll show you what I'm currently reading, and then we can go from there. I am currently reading the one by, okay, I'll go in order of what I'm furthest into. I'm furthest into the Hunger Games. Whatever I last updated you on, that's where I am. I'm still on that page. I have enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it every time I picked it up. I think that I have squirrel brain sometimes, and when I see something else that I want to read, also, I'm like, I have to read that. I have to read it right now, right this second. I must do it. And so I think that that's what happened to me. Definitely that's what happened to me. I'm also reading Tar Baby, and I've officially started it. I'm only a few pages in. I have been picking it up and putting it down for, I want to say, a couple of weeks at this point. But now, especially after going to, and you'll see this on probably the next video, but I went to a banned book read-in at Kindred Stories down in Houston, or up in Houston. No, it's down for me. Down in Houston. And I had a good time doing that. But we had this little thing at Kindred where we were allowed to, if we wanted, to go up and read a bit of what we're reading, like a bit from what we're reading, and kind of talk about why we chose to share it with the group and that whole thing. And I wasn't deep enough into Tar Baby to talk about it, but I had recently, last year, I read The Bluest Eye, and I think it was last year at this point, I read The Bluest Eye, and there was a passage towards the end that really, really stuck with me, and it's after you see Pecola talking to her imaginary friend, and it's Claudia sitting there kind of watching her, or just like thinking back on what happened. And anyway, that passage, that there were a couple little pieces. Claudia talks about how, should I just read? Let me just read it to you. So I'll just show you. This is about, The Bluest Eye is about a little black girl who wants blue eyes. She wants them real bad, and there are some things that transpire, and there is like sort of a mental breaking that takes place for her because of the events that happen in her life. And then the town, you know, witnessed all of what happened. But I don't know. Okay, let me just not ruin it by continuing to talk about it. I'll just tell you. This is Claudia speaking, and she says, "We were so beautiful when we stood astride her ugliness. Her simplicity decorated us. Her guilt sanctified us. Her pain made us glow with health. Her awkwardness made us think we had a sense of humor. Her inarticulateness made us believe we were eloquent. Her poverty kept us generous. Even her waking dreams we used to silence our own nightmares. And she led us, and thereby deserved our contempt. We honed our egos on her, padded our characters with her frailty, and yawned in the fantasy of our strength." And then this is the other little piece I read. And there's a motif of marigolds, but I mean, you would understand if you read it. "And now when I see her searching the garbage for what? The thing we assassinated, I talk about how I did not plant the seeds too deeply. How it was the fault of the earth, the land of our town. I even think now that the land of the entire country was hostile to marigolds that year. This soil is bad for certain kinds of flowers. Certain seeds it will not nurture, certain fruit it will not bear. And when the land kills of its own volition, we acquiesce and say the victim had no right to live. We are wrong, of course, but it doesn't matter. It's too late. At least on the edge of my town, among the garbage and the sunflowers of my town, it's much, much, much too late." And this is, of course, her just bearing witness, like I said, to what happened to Pecola, and, you know, talking about hers and her town's, their complacency, or like what makes them complicit in everything that went on. And anyway, I felt that was really powerful. And so that is what I read from, because like I told them at Kindred when we were there, or like I said there, us sitting here reading banned books in the midst of everything that's going on in the world right now is us sitting here bearing witness in the way that we can, the way that we have the ability to. And Toni Morrison is like the queen of bearing witness to really, really just awful circumstances. And so it just felt like a full circle moment for me. And especially given that I was also reading a newer to me Toni Morrison. And so Kindred stories, bookstores in general, are just very powerful places, and they're definitely their own places of just like quiet protest. I have been increasingly drawn towards independent bookstores because I think obviously everybody's trying to sell something, and that is fantastic, or it can be fantastic. But also in certain kinds of bookstores, in certain kinds of artistic spaces in general, places that hold the art like near and dear, I don't know, there's this thing, this palpable thing. And going to Kindred and sitting there and being among people who are just interested in reading what they want to read, and especially reading powerful things, I don't know, there was something there. Okay, I am also currently, so I'm reading Tar Baby right now. I am reading The Hunger Games. I'm trying to read Rebecca. I haven't really started it. Like, I've read, a page here or there or whatever, but I haven't really started it. Again, just struggling a little bit with reading, and I don't know if it's because I'm reading the wrong thing or if it's because just like I'm mentally drained. Like, I don't really know what's going on, but reading has been interesting to say the least lately. And what I will say is, the reason I want to read this is because I still have, there are multiple reasons. So Benjamin McAvoy, who does the how to read for classic literature on YouTube, and he has a Patreon where he does the hardcore literature book club, where like he does weekly videos and like walks through live the process of reading particular books, and it's all really good, really powerful. He just had a baby, and the book club did Rebecca last month, and he likens Rebecca to Jane Eyre, or says like, if you want to have something complimentary, maybe read Jane Eyre. And I read Jane Eyre last year, and I really loved it, and I'm like, I kind of want to still stay in that spooky mode, and this is sort of about like the haunting of a dead relative, and a new person moves into the house. Like, I feel like it would be really fun for me to read this, and I think now is a good time to read a little bit more like dark literature, but I also kind of want to read Wuthering Heights, and I think that I'm gonna save Wuthering Heights for like true winter. But yeah, so I think what I'm trying to say is, while I get myself through the rest of October, I want to focus on The Hunger Games, which I can probably finish this week because it's gonna be my main focus. I want to focus on getting a good amount of the way through Rebecca and Tar Baby as well. And I think that because I'm halfway through a 24-hour reading challenge right now, I think I can definitely finish this and get myself a good amount of the way into Rebecca, so that I can like allow myself the joy of reading Tar Baby very slowly for October and maybe November. And so I think that that's what I'm gonna do. I'm not super decided. Like I said, I don't think it's a good time for me to do a very locked down like October TBR pull, like with jars and things like that. I think that the better move for me is to focus on the things that are bringing me calm and joy. I think that that's the better idea for me. The other two that I may throw into here, so I guess maybe I am making a little bit of a TBR. I'm trying to see if I have it. Hang on. I'm double checking with the hardcore literature book club of this month is. I think it's Emma, and I think that that's something I could get behind. Okay, book club schedule. Emma for November. Oh, okay, so Emma isn't until November, so I'll save that. And then Rebecca is still going through October. Okay, so yeah, I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my time with these three. The other book that I might pick up is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, because Jack Edwards' Inklings is doing that for this coming month. I think it starts next week officially, I think that the next reading, they're just finishing up The Coin, so I think that they're going to start that one next month. I think I'll pick up Frankenstein because it's a pretty slim read. I've read it a couple of times, and I think it just might be nice to share community with some people, and that would reinvigorate my reading mood. But anyways, so I guess these are my TBR, and I've already told you that these are a couple of what I already read, and yeah, I think that's it. So let's see if we can get ourselves together for next month. You'll be seeing another one of these reading wrap videos a little bit more quickly than normal, because I am only going to be wrapping up a couple of weeks of reading. But thanks so much for stopping in, and I'll see you in the next one.